Oh, look who's there. Hello world, how are you? This weird man here is Augusto, the author of Shadow of Mars, the series. Pleased to meet you, and I'm glad I found this device to communicate with you around the world. And so, well, I will try to answer to the interview that you made me. The first question, that is, your passions are many, from cosplay to music as well as writing. Your creativity ranges through various fields, so we can call you an eclectic artist. Tell us what influence each of these activities has had on your life and in what orders of importance, so that the readers, or the listeners in this case, can know you better. I am, since always, a very creative person. I feel the need to express my creativity in all the possible ways. I started to play music at the age of 12, and I started to write quite early as well. I believe it was around 15. As a teen, I had as a hobby role-playing games and everything that was fantasy or science fiction related. When I was a teenager, I was reading around 50 books per year and countless comics and mostly fantasy and science fiction, and then played a lot to Dungeons and Dragons with my friends, which was my ideal game. Back in '97, I won an important prize in a science fiction literature competition in Italy, and I think it was with the Manipulators, that was a short novel. And since then, well, I did work for several role-playing games and fantasy magazines back in the 90s. My passion for cosplay is much later, and is just a consequence of my passion for fantasy, science fiction and comics. And certainly I cannot consider myself a true cosplayer, because most I have is I cosplayed mostly just the characters of my own novels, and not always the same, of course, and as you see here. Second question is, when and how do your other activities and passions affect your writing, or vice versa? When and how does your writing affect your other assets? Well, as I must say that everything in life is giving me hints or suggestions how to make music, write novels, make illustrations, and everything I do is somehow connected with my real life, so it's hard to draw a line between these two things. I believe that it's easier to write when you transpose the real experiences. The feelings are real, choices are logical, and the emotions involved are honest. So, well, as an example, I was in the military between 93 and 94, and I was a Navy soldier in the mountain troopers. So I know the military environment, and I use these memories to relate with the military environment every time I have to write about it. I was never involved in any real war action, even if my brigade was deployed in Mozambique during as United Nations troopers in the Albatross mission, but well, this is it. Well, I'm telling you this just because every experience in my life is somehow related to some parts, or is appearing somehow in my books. Not directly, of course, but you know. You will never find the taxi driver, but you will find the crazy stuff like happened in just transposed in the fantasy world. Next question is asking me how did my interest in the steampunk genre begin, and what encouraged me in further exploration. So I always found steampunk a very interesting genre. I am a big fan of steampunk since steampunk exists, and since back in the 80s I was even playing Space 1889, and it was a very good role-playing game. And but at that time steampunk seldom gave some product, so I was always looking for more comics, more movies, more books, and everything that could be steampunk related. But this appeared just in the latest years, and so this made me happy. And even my band back in 2003 was called the Windsor's Machine, as a tribute for my passion and our passion for steampunk. And in 2013, just a couple of years ago, just completed my very first steampunk novel. I found an association of people that was very supportive and big fans of steampunk, and so I met very wonderful people and a big community, and I discovered a big community was missing around the world, that were the steampunkers, and I really enjoyed it. The fourth question, yes, is there any books that you have read, as well as any film or other media that have addressed or influenced the above trend? Well, that's quite hard to tell. I must say many and none at the same time. Certainly my favorite books influenced me somehow, but I always get inspiration more from real life than from books. I mean, I was always fascinated by Mars, as described in the old novel The Sword of Rhiannon, Leif Brackett, and this has to be said, and probably, of course, Jules Verne and The World of Words. Fifth question is more generally, what are your literary preferences? I must say that I read almost everything, as my personal library may show you, but my favorite authors are, without any doubt, Terry Pratchett and the entire Discord series, Roger Zelazny and his Amber's Saga, and Leif Brackett, that I did say before, The Sword of Rhiannon, or the Italian Italo Calvino. Sixth question, ask me if there is any music or song in particular that would make me say this would be the perfect soundtrack for my book. When I imagine the soundtrack for my Shadow of Mars series, I somehow tempted to mix classical style soundtracks and the ambient electronica played by Vangelis in Blade Runner. I believe there exists an artist that mixes well these two genres that are named Two Steps from Hell. They made two wonderful CDs, Skyward and Invincible, and that contains plenty of tracks that I would really love to could be featured as themes or main titles if my books would ever go on big screen, on TV screen. Next questions ask me, when did you write your first book? Well, I did write plenty of short novels, scenarios for role-playing games and other stuff in the 90s, but the very first complete novel that I wrote had to wait since 2012. Well, I started to write it in 2011, but, well, close to. Oh, the 8 questions ask me, tell us about the Shadows of Mars trilogy. How did it start? Why a trilogy? And did you plan this aspect from the beginning? I always had in mind to write down something steampunk With friends, we thought to make a web series. As in past, we filmed several different web series in different genres, and well, some were quite rough and some were quite better, but well, we always had big fun making them. So for the fourth web series, we thought to switch to science fiction, and we had already the stage costumes for my band were steampunk, and so we decided to do something steampunk related. I started to write the script in 2011 and decided to have no limits about to imagination. I mean, not to think about the budget or so, but just to write it down as it was going on. And so I started to write Clockwork or Ogeria, and when it was complete, I realized that we would never fit about our budget to film it, as it was too complicated to film it by ourselves. So I did plenty of editing and transformed it in a novel, as I thought it could be interesting material for readers. And as everybody can see, the novel in itself is made as a script, so more than chapters, these are scenes and so on. And readers generally like it, and it has more rhythm, and it shows, it builds up the story as a movie while reading. And this is what I wanted to do, like to imagine a movie in your head. I planned to write a single novel, but there were some readers who started to write me, asking me for more, so I wrote a second one. Then those readers became more readers that contacted me to write and asked me to write more, and so I wrote a third one, a war novel called The Mechanical Shadow. And then, well, that's it. It became a trilogy before even think to it. And about an order, yes, every novel is written to be read separately from the others. It means it's not necessary to know the first one to read the second one, and so on. But well, of course, if you are interested in the series, it's better to read it in the order. And about Cold Hell, that is the first short novel that you will find translated in English. I must say that I wrote it as prologue for the second novel, that was The Airship to Mars. But as it was narrating adventures about the very first adventures of some character that some important character from the every book, I thought it was much better placed as prologue of the whole series, and so you find that. 9 questions ask me why my steampunk story is not in a Victorian setting, but much later, at least 10 years beyond the end of this era. Well, plenty of authors already wrote wonderfully about the Victorian steampunk. I simply thought I wanted more to explore more of the world than just the British part of the world, or the English-speaking world. That there is also plenty of American authors that are very interesting readings, and so I had to find another setting, but I wanted a continental setting, like European continental, and to find the same elements as like technology, and so I had to go a bit farther in time, as United Kingdom was already in a different century than the rest of the world in the Victorian era. It was really dominating both culturally and technologically. And so I found, I preferred to go forward in time and found what I was searching in the so-called Belle Époque era. I also wanted more flying machines like the airplanes, and so not just zeppelins. So I had to go when they were already invented, or at least closer. And I mixed a bit of France, a bit of Italy, and so everyone was reading the series is at the same time familiar and exotic. Well, locations are a mix of familiar and exotic at the same time, which is what I really wanted to obtain. 10th question is asking me, what do you think of the growing digital element of the literary industry, and does your allegiance lie with the print, the book, or both? Let me tell you something. I think the e-readers have changed the world as MP3 changed the music. You may think this is a good or bad thing. I don't saying it's good or bad, but if you have to, I think you have to live with it, even if you don't like it. So what's positive is that it's a great occasion for the outsider to emerge. There are plenty of examples around the world about it. Personally, I own a decent home library. You see just a quarter of it behind my back. And but I also own a pretty large e-book library in my electronic devices. This is very useful as I cannot simply get in my chair and read at home every time. So I often happen to have time to waste or free time to read in waiting rooms, trains, airplanes, and so on. Of course, you could bring with you a real book, but if it happens that you did take with you the wrong book, you cannot change it, or you cannot go with a backpack full of books when you go everywhere. So it's really a good thing that you may have every book with you in electronic format. And I really like to read in every time I can. So no matter what is the device, like an ebook reader or just my smartphone, and I can just read every book that I have in my virtual library. Last question is asking me, is there anybody that I would like to thank, and what can we expect to see of you in the coming years? Oh well, as my future, I think I will keep on writing as I enjoy it, and at the very moment I am completing my third fantasy book, with selling, well, the fantasy series is selling pretty well, and is receiving enthusiastic reviews by the readers. And I think that then I will write more about my steampunk world, and just because more fans are pushing me about it, and I really like the idea. And I have to thank too many people to mention them all here, but I would really start with my brother William, who did push me to write more, and because he did believe in me, and my editor DieGo who has always the hard task to read my novels when they are just rough sketches, and so it tells me quite a lot to make it in the right form. And I also want to thank you, my publisher, that DieGo Productions, that is believing in me at the moment and is publishing my English version, the English version of my writings, and also you that did complete this with a lot of passion, this weird interview, and I hope my English was not as horrible as I am afraid. So just don't be afraid about my English, just because when you read my writings, they are translated and edited by the publisher. So don't be afraid. The English I am speaking is not the same I am writing. The wrote one is much better. Thank you very much to listen to this, and I hope we will see you next time. See you.